Hi, and welcome back to the Web TV studio here at the Stockholm School of Economics in Sweden. We are joined by our last guest of the day, and it's a very fantastic guest to have. He is the co-founder of Sevian Capital and currently the manager and director. His name is Gardell, and we're very proud to have you in the studio. Nice to have you here.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
You, as many know, you are an SSE alumni, and during your time here, we understand that you played a lot of tennis. Were you engaged in anything else here at school, or was it simply the books for you?
It was. I was involved in the from a sports perspective. I played in the team in basketball. Mm-hmm. My prime sport has been basketball. I was a Swedish champion in '79, and we had quite a bit of competition in the basketball team. We're playing a big tournament every year in Paris, which we pretty successfully participated in. Otherwise, in terms of engagement in the school at that time, no real formal assignments, but obviously, took part in all the parties like everyone else.
Good. Have you ever been to any of the banquets or events here after the Handelsdagarna, or?
Well, I've been here a few times. We haven't participated ourselves, Sevian, but obviously we're a keen recruiter from Handels. We recruited, I think, more or less everyone in the Stockholm office has a background from Stockholm School of Economics.
And we've spoken to a lot of people, had a lot of guests here in the studio that are past alumni. For example, yesterday we had Bengt Baron in the studio, the old Absolut Vodka and Vin & Sprit CEO. And,
yeah, but Bengt Baron is not an SSE.
Berkeley, sorry. Yes, Berkeley.
I actually went to Berkeley when I was at McKinsey. And interviewed Bengt, and I recruited him to McKinsey.
Okay, good, because this leads us right into our question then. Bengt spoke a lot about how his time at McKinsey, it really helped him fill a lot of big tools in his toolbox that helped him move on in his career. And you spent a great deal of time at McKinsey, and we see it as a constant pattern. You, Claes Ekström, Börje Ekholm, for example, at Harryson. What do you really think is that the time at McKinsey gave you, and what in your future career?
Yeah, I think when I joined McKinsey was a little bit of a different firm compared to where it is today. I think when I joined the Scandinavian office, I don't think we were more than 20 people. Mm-hmm. So the first phase of my time with McKinsey was really to build a business of management consulting in Scandinavia. That was an embryonic business, and it didn't really have a place in sort of business, and so that was quite an exciting time. Meaning also that you had to work in all sorts of industries. I was doing everything from banking, and I did a major project in aluminium smelting in Tasmania, Australia. So that was the full spectrum, and that, for me, that's been the most valuable things from McKinsey. I think the width of the industries that I've been working, and in addition to that, obviously, the great thing about McKinsey is that you learn structured problem solving in a fast-paced environment. And that's been when I moved into when I became an investor in '95. I think those things of the width of industry experience, and also the fact that you can easily get into new situations in a pretty structured way. I think that's been, at least I felt, it's been an advantage.
And it sounds like you're getting right into that as well. The skills you bring when you started and founded Sevian. What can you bring us through that trip a bit? Because we have a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs here at SSE that aren't really sure of how does the process work in starting a company, let alone a very successful active investing.
Yeah, I was the chief executive of AB Custos, an investment holding company listed on the Stockholm Stock Exchange from '96 to 2001, and at the end there, I together with a couple of other guys, said that we really would like to start our own business, and so we decided to do that. We had a great time at where we were, but at least we wanted to do our own thing. And obviously there is risk. You know, there are no guarantees. You know, we were spending 2 years of fundraising. It was very difficult. And we signed the contract for Sevian with the key investor. And this was September. It was 9/11. At the same time as we signed the papers, the plane started to fly into World Trade Center. And so that's a date we never will forget.
And did that have a severe impact on your initial operations, or?
Well, obviously, really made the start quite difficult. The world came into turmoil, and do fundraising in that environment. And you had 9/11, and you also had the IT bubble crash. So when we started the business, the fundraising was very tough. So we spent traveling around the world for about 2 years before we finally could get the capital together. But that was a tough journey.
Yeah, and somewhere along the way there, you managed to get Carl Icahn on to be one of your big backers. Can you tell us a bit about how that came to be and how you know him?
I was introduced to Carl, I think it was back in '98 when I was the chief executive of Custos, and we brought in Carl and managed to convince him into co-investing with us in Assi Domän, you can call it the pulp and paper conglomerate back in the days, and it was a very successful investment. Carl, you know, came to know us, and he liked us. He liked the way we're approaching our business, and you know, that led to us developing a friendship. So you know, we became very good friends, and we still are very, very good friends. And when we started our business in Sevian, obviously we approached Carl, and he said, you know, I'd like to invest with you, and so he was one of the key backers in the first Sevian fund.
And that network is very impressive. And here in Stockholm, Lars Strannegård, our president, was here speaking on the fact that SSE has a really strong network with the business world here in Sweden. But also Stockholm's very small, and I'm sure you're aware that you run into a lot of familiar faces at the same time at the top. Does that have a big impact on how you work and how you treat your counterparty companies when you're working in such a small environment compared to a place like, say, New York or globally?
Yeah, well, we are our business is European, so you know, we're not bound to invest in Sweden. Sweden is one out of several countries that we invest in. We have offices in Zurich and London and Stockholm. So, but obviously, you know, we've been brought up in Sweden. But as an investor, you know, your own companies, you need to be able to make tough decisions, even though there could be people that you know in companies that are personal friends to you. So you know, it's tougher in a way, but you need to. With the job I have, you need to operate in a way in Sweden as you do in the UK, for example. So you need to be able to make tough decisions.
Speaking of running into, I guess, old colleagues or friends, Sevian just went in with a big stake as the main shareholder now in Harryson, which is now being run by former investor CEO and now current Harryson CEO, Börje Ekholm. You spoke a little bit about in an article, in an interview, that you have the sentiment that we need to speed up the effectivization process and the change at Harryson, that the current layout is a bit too slow for you. Can you elaborate a bit on what you believe needs to change?
First of all, I'll say that you know, Börje is the chief executive, and know Börje since you know, our relationship goes back to McKinsey. And is a very good, very capable manager, and we're fully supportive of Börje and his efforts in turning Harryson around. But we think what we communicate is that Harryson is carrying quite a few losses in some divisions, and it is never good for a company to keep losses for too long. Because it sort of it's setting a culture in the business that it's acceptable to make a loss. So when we looked at the plans of Harryson, I think our comment was that we agree in the direction of the plans, but we think that the pace should be turned up a bit.
And oftentimes when you come into companies, you have very decisive power, and you have a lot of power over what actually gets acted out. When you run into a man like Börje, who has an incredible background with the management, like you expressed yourself, how does the relationship between you and him work, and how much do you think gets through and absorbed of what Cevian wants out of Harryson?
No, I think first of all, I think we're in agreement with the direction, and I think both Börje and myself were brought up in sort of the McKinsey world that is fact-based. You have facts, you argue based on facts, and you need to be pragmatic. You need to absorb facts, and then if new facts means that you need to change the way you thought about an issue, you do that. Mm-hmm. And I see Börje's fact-based and it's pragmatic, and so are we. So we think and that's a good foundation for a great relationship.
Mm-hmm. We spoke a little bit about some investments like Volvo that have gone very well for you. Also, right now you hold a 29.5% stake in the German construction group Bilfinger, after your pre-investment analysis seemed to leave some rocks unturned. What is your way of handling investments like this that I guess go sour or don't deliver returns right away when you oftentimes have very good success?
Yeah, first of all, the reason why it's a bad investment. Fortunately, we're very thorough in the analytical work leading up to an investment, and we've only I've been doing this for 21 years now, and there's only been 2 investments with negative returns, and Bilfinger is one of them. So our analytical work leading up to the investment decision was not thorough enough, and therefore lots of issues came up during the investment that we probably should have been able to detect in the analytical work. So it was our first investment into Germany, and it was a business that had been built up by a number of small acquisitions, and that's typically red flags. You need to be extra careful when you invest in a business like that. And but given that we've been through a massive restructuring of the business, been selling a few divisions, been changing chief executive 2 or 3 times, and as a large shareholder like we own almost 30% of the business. You have the responsibility to turn it around. We took a big position, and therefore, we don't have the option to just sell the stock in the market. We need to fix it. Mm-hmm. And that's the process we're in. And we have 2 Cevian people on the board, one being the chairman and the other one a regular board member. And, we're pretty confident that we're going to get there, but it will never be a great investment for us.
Mm-hmm. You sort of alluded to it there, that you have a strong belief that oftentimes smaller is better, concentration on a specific...
Well, I think it's very clear that the day of conglomerates, the days are gone. It's always been a complicated structure, and in the complicated global economy that we have today, with all the emerging markets coming in to compete with our businesses, it's an impossible structure. It's too complicated, it becomes too bureaucratic, too slow. In this environment, you need to be fast. So we believe in cleaning up conglomerates and creating focused businesses with their own board, with their own management, incentive systems built up around the individual business. And we like to invest in conglomerates because they always underperform. Mm-hmm. So if you can invest in an underperforming conglomerate, and you can focus it by dividing it up into the logical business units, it will always be a good investment. Mm-hmm.
And do you ever think that there is a time where conglomerates in size is advantageous? For example, we see the rise of Amazon now to become one of the world's greatest companies. Totally different field, and also different spectrum of what you guys invest in.
Yeah, but I think Amazon obviously a fascinating business model, how they enter into competition with all sort of the retail franchises of yesterday. And but I think Amazon is going to get into, because when everyone is adopting to the new way of doing business, I think Amazon will be the next General Electric or Siemens that would be forced to restructure themselves in maybe, say, within 10 years.
Okay, wow. And do you think that is inevitable? It's not something that, say, Jeff Bezos and management team could.
No, I think they're going to be. It's going to be. They have an advantage now that they don't have any baggage. But as other businesses will adopt, they will suffer from the fact that they are all over the place.
And this idea that you have, it also is reflected in Savion's expansion. You've previously mentioned that your interest in expanding to investing, say, in the U.S. is limited because you believe there are enough opportunities in Europe. Do you think you're long-term going to stay in Europe for good?
Yeah, we're our investment mandate from our investors is Europe, and with the as the activist, large activist, we're the only one in Europe, so competition is very limited. And in the U.S. there are a few 5, 6 large activist funds, and we don't see any reason for getting in there. And I also think that from a corporate governance perspective, which is important for an activist, we think the legislation is more problematic for the shareholder in the U.S. than it is in Europe. So it's easier to operate in Europe than in the U.S. And that's why in the U.S. you see so many battles, corporate battles, and that is due to the fact that the legislation is very protective to management, while in Europe it's typically not.
Okay. And say then, since you get much more control here in Europe and power, which is very, like you said, advantageous to activist investing. Somewhere along the line, though, ethics come into the question. And Savion, do you guys have a policy on ethics and where the bottom line goes and how you both treat and leave companies once you make your exit?
Yeah, I think the ethical guidelines are, we're joining the board of most of the companies, and all the ethical issues, corporate social responsibility and so forth are well taken care of within companies. And obviously we wouldn't invest in a company that is bad at ethics or corporate social responsibility, because that's going to hurt the business and hurt the shareholders. So it would be stupid to do that. So obviously that's it's become much more in focus. It's much more important these days. So we pay a lot of attention to it. In terms of exiting a business, obviously we would always like to leave a business when the business is good. And so we feel like we've added value to the investment, and it's also when we exited Volvo now to Geely, the Chinese firm. We were approached by the Chinese, and obviously we were leaving Volvo as the largest shareholder. You want to leave it to someone that you feel good about. So we did a lot of thinking, did a lot of research on Geely. And I think the fact that they've been very successful with Volvo Cars, that was important for us. And if we would have been approached by an anonymous Chinese firm, I don't think we would have sold.
And realizing that investment, that's been a long-term investment that you've been holding for over 11 years, correct? You're undergoing a lot of growth as you have been since day one, and I assume your staff is growing accordingly.
Yeah, we're give and take 50 people.
When you acquire talent, have you had to adjust the way you scout and recruit people, maybe compared to, say, 10 years ago, based on new developments and competencies that you need?
I don't know. I think we roughly do the same. We go to Handelsdagarna and we recruit people and we give them offers.
Okay, good. Then everyone in here is off to a good start then. Do you? Are you strictly? I mean, certain law firms are known to do that. Are you strictly Handels, or do you go externally as well?
We do other schools, but mostly. Some people would have double exams and so forth, but I think we've been so sad. I've been recruiting from McKinsey. I've been recruiting so many people over the years from I probably recruited several hundred people from Handels, and I think it's a good. We're satisfied. We don't see any reason why we should go elsewhere.
We prior we had the interview with Lars Strannegård, and we spoke a little about Handels as a school. some students believe that during the bachelor time, because you do bachelor hires, I understand, that they really just read coursework and then show up and write exams, and they don't really take part in the lectures in our atrium and things like that. Do you think it's a problem that the school is designed in a way that you can work while you study, or do you think that it's a good layout that you work while and don't take a full part in your studies?
Nah, I think I didn't work when I was here. I was sort of enjoying the lectures, and I was interested in the topics that I studied. Some people maybe sort of see my interest. I think it's important to take full participation in the school, and I think you're missing out quite a bit if you don't do that.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that companies that do recruit straight from bachelors and have these internship programs that give students incentives to not be in school, which is a common trend we see amongst many students, that the top students here at SSE oftentimes aren't in class because they're off at an internship somewhere. Do you think that this incentive process is fine, or do you think...
Well, incentive process of to work while studying?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, right now the system that we see is that most of the top students know that to lock up my job so I can get it after my bachelor, I'll do an internship there at the same time while keeping my grades. Do you think that is a fine layout, or do you think that it should be changed to be more school-focused?
Well, it sounds pretty tough, working and studies.
I mean, working at Sevion's tough too.
Yeah, but then you do full-time when you're done. But to work at the same time as you study, I wouldn't. We wouldn't. We don't put that much emphasis on that. We think it's. We think more about the intrinsic qualities of the individual. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's.
And bringing it back just to where we are at one of the biggest job fairs here in the Nordics, and people are looking for jobs. People are applying. Can you speak a bit just on, you spoke a little about how you do industry hires, and can you speak a bit about what you guys look for in candidates that are applying to Sevion? What backgrounds, what are key indicators for you? Maybe just as you have key indicators in companies, you have key indicators in candidates.
Yeah, well, obviously it's what's important is the analytical integrity. You need to be analytical, and you need to have the self-confidence to believe. Believe in a conclusion that is very different from what is generally perceived as the truth in a company, whatever. We're looking at the value opportunities that are 100% above the current share price. And some people just can't take the risk of deviating so much from what is generally accepted as the truth. So I think for me is the analytical integrity, analytical self-confidence is very important.
Okay. Yeah. Well, there you have it. Be smart, confident, and have some academic integrity, especially within your analytical skills. It's been an honor speaking with you, Christer, and I hope the best with the Ericsson investment, and that we get to see a turnaround, one of the great Swedish companies.
Okay.
We'll be back to you soon with an interview with the president and vice president of Handelsdagarna before we close out this year's web TV studio broadcasts. Thank you.